Now, you were one of the rebels today. I don't know if you were aware of this, but much to my amazement, we were fully expecting there would be 78 Tory rebel MPs voting against COVID passports. In fact, there were 98. Is
No, no,
that...
no. No, I think the figure on one of the votes was 103 and the other one 101.
Okay, stand corrected again. Even more amazing. Does that surprise you?
It does. I was thinking there was going to be between 60 and 70. So I think it even more reinforces the message that the Prime Minister has got to change the way he leads the Conservative Party. If it was, say, let's call it around 100, one way or another.
Yeah, we'll agree on that.
It's almost a third of the party. And, that is a very significant vote against the government. He's got to change the way he does things. He's got to come back in the new year, start consulting the party properly, and try and get measures that actually the whole party can support.
Now, there's a couple of points to make about COVID passports, or what are they're calling them COVID passes, but what we're talking about is vaccine passports. 2 points to make. One, they've never succeeded anywhere in the world, as far as I can work out, and certainly they've been rather spectacularly unsuccessful in both Wales and Scotland after a month and a half or so. So the question has to be asked, why on earth impose them on England now? And secondly, for such an important restriction on our freedom, surely it was incumbent on Boris and Sajid and the Cabinet to provide people like yourselves, Sir Geoffrey, the MPs, statistics, data, to prove why this was necessary. As far as I can work out, there's one death, and we don't know who that was, what the circumstances were, and about 9 people in hospital. What exactly is the reason for imposing vaccine passports on England?
So I have been pleading with the government ever since the Prime Minister announced this last week to provide us with the statistics, with the data. After all, if you recall, Kevin, when you and I talked about the roadmap, the Prime Minister time and after time said it was all about data, not dates. This seems to be all about dates, not data.
Yeah.
I despair really why the government couldn't have given us that data. If they didn't have the data, why are they trying to impose it on the British population? You and I again have discussed this time after time. What we're asking people to do, and the British people are immensely sensible. When they go to a football match or whatever, just say to them, before you go, just take a very simple lateral flow test. But, now we've got all this compulsion. You've got to show phones or bits of paper or whatever you've had either a lateral flow or you've taken the vaccines. It just is not the British way of doing things.
And the other thing, Sir Geoffrey, is that, we don't know for sure. That's the thing about Omicron. We don't know actually clinically anything about it, really. That will take a couple more weeks to establish the facts. But we do know it spreads quite quickly. But the indications from South Africa, where it was discovered, are that the symptoms are rather mild. A couple of days sniffles, a bit of aches and pains, tired, bit of a cough, and then you're okay. So once again, if that's the case, why is Boris acting as if the bubonic plague is among us? Because, okay, maybe it spreads quickly, but if it's true that the symptoms are very mild, spreading quickly, isn't that crucial?
Exactly. That is precisely the point. If you remember, when, again, going back to the roadmap, the Prime Minister set out 5 criteria, and the 5th criteria was whether the health service was going to be overwhelmed or not. Now, if these cases are not transmitting into hospital cases, the NHS is not going to be overwhelmed. And what I'm hearing at the moment is what is actually happening in the NHS is that largely those people who are going into hospital are those people that have not been vaccinated, let alone those go into intensive care, are largely people that have not been vaccinated. So I fully support the Prime Minister in encouraging us all to get vaccinated, get our booster when we can, as soon as we can. That, I think, makes a great deal of sense. But actually to try and compel people into producing bits of paper or showing a phone before you can get into an event, I just completely disagree with that.
Yes, if I may say so, it's not very conservative. It does not in any way preserve our liberty. It attacks our liberty. And I think that's a very important principle for Tory MPs, particularly like yourself. Now, 100 or so have rebelled against the Prime Minister on this issue. That is a sizable rebellion. I mean, does this add up, Sir Geoffrey, to the fact that the Prime Minister is simply out of touch with his own party members?
Well, I think you've got to conclude that a bit. And therefore, that's one of the aspects he needs to come back in the new year and really think to himself, how am I going to reunite with my party? How am I going to consult them? How am I going to lead them in, going forward so that they'll actually support me? And I think it's a really serious issue when a third of the party won't support their leader. But he can still claw it back, but it does require him to change, I think.
There is another aspect that's cropped up tonight. Perhaps some people might say it's a bit of a side issue, but the business of optics in politics are very important. We've just learnt that MPs in the Palace of Westminster will be exempt from COVID passports. That will not go down well with the people because, frankly, after the last couple of weeks, we're beginning to think, Sir Geoffrey, there's one rule for them. I'm excluding you, but shall we say the elites from the Downing Street quarters, and another rule for the rest of us. This is not a good syndrome. So,
I abstained on the mask vote because I think there is some justification for masks. If you look at me on all the cameras, you will see that I do wear a mask in the House of Commons. I entirely agree with you, Kevin. If the Prime Minister wants to make these rules against significant rebellion in the party, of course, that's democracy. And I believe that the House of Commons should abide by those rules. And we should, all of us, have to either prove that we've had a lateral flow test or we've had two vaccinations. It's the only logical conclusion to what has happened tonight.
On that issue, Partygate and all that, I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but what's your take on it? I mean, I thought it was rather overblown, a lot of the stories about it, but I do think that story, or those stories, if there were 7 parties in Downing Street, went some way towards eroding the Prime Minister's moral authority as he tries to impose rules on us. Because we say, if you're not going to obey your own rules, why should we obey them?
So 2 things to say on this. The first thing is, if I had been Prime Minister when the story broke in the Mirror, I would have immediately said, well, I wasn't at any of the parties. I don't know exactly what went on, but I will carry out a proper investigation and I will come back within 48 hours, tell the nation what happened. If people have broken the rules, they will be disciplined and the evidence will be passed to the police. I think the whole problem with all of that was that it's dragged on for so long, and first it was 1 party, as you say, then 2, then 3, God knows how many more. The Prime Minister just didn't grip the problem quickly enough, in my view.
Now, I'm sure you're going to be a loyal lieutenant of the Prime Minister here, a loyal Tory MP, but, I'm not exactly averse to the politics of Boris Johnson or indeed the Tory party, but I look at the leader of this country over the last month or so, month and a half, and I despair. I think, what is happening to the Tory government? What is the leader up to? He needs to get a serious grip, doesn't he, going into the new year?
Yes. I want your listeners to be very, very clear on this. And I want the Prime Minister, if anybody's listening from number 10 to this, I want the Prime Minister to succeed. But to do that, he's got to change the way he operates. He's got to consult the party more, and he's got to come up with policies that are, as you say, proper Conservative policies, which means, by and large, allowing the individual to choose, but to make sensible choices how they live their lives.
And return, Sir Geoffrey, dominion to individuals of their own bodies, their own health. I mean, of course the government has to be concerned if 1,000 people a day are dying from some virus. But now that not that many people are dying, and as we just discussed, Omicron seems to be quite mild. It surely is time for the government to think about saying to the people, as you indicated earlier, look, if you just be sensible and careful, we're going to leave it to you from now on.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. If you feel unwell, don't go to a football match. If you go to a football match, it would be advisable to take a lateral flow test, which is so simple to do. They're handed out for free. You can do them in 2 or 3 minutes. And then, let them settle perhaps for 10, 15 minutes to see the result. But and then when you go to the football match that you haven't got the disease, because you can have the disease without feeling ill. But these are really simple things that everybody should be thinking about, and that's what the government should be encouraging people to do on a voluntary basis. Get the jab, behave sensibly, and we'll defeat this disease.
And leave it to us. We don't need this much government control.
Exactly.
Again, I got to say, it's very unconservative once again. Last question, Sir Geoffrey. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I know it's been a busy day for you. But, of course, what we're all really worried about, we hope we won't get Christmas cancelled. Let's give Boris the benefit of the doubt and say he'll allow us the festive period. But, of course, there are worries that all these increasing restrictions are leading to the ultimate one, a lockdown in January. Will you and your fellow Tory MPs do your level best to try to persuade him, please, no more lockdowns?
Well, there's no justification, Kevin, whatsoever at the present time to even be thinking about a lockdown. And I can tell you, if the rebellion on these measures was 103, if we get a lockdown proposed, which will have even more damage on businesses than these proposals, and I have to say these proposals are already having damage. I've already had hospitality businesses saying that Christmas parties have been cancelled, the number of people coming into their restaurant is down. So this is already doing damage to the economy. If we got another lockdown, I think you'll find that the party would go bananas. I think the rebellion would be even higher.
I agree, and we're going to trust you to keep up the good fight on that, because Plan B, I don't even think it's necessary, but it's bad enough. Please, for God's sake, not Plan C. Sir Geoffrey, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. That's Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. He's the Conservative MP for the Cotswolds, and he's also a member of the COVID recovery group.